Hello. We are at war. I'm going to speak clearly to you. And unfortunately, things may get a bit long-winded. But make no mistake, we are at war, and it's incumbent upon us, our generation, we who have the vision now, to save this world and to save the United States, to save Europe. I'm Swedish-American. And I've been active for 15 years in the fight for democracy against dictatorship in Latin America. So I'm viewing this over a perspective of several continents, okay? Now, as it comes to Donald Trump, I am not going to say this in order to try to glorify myself, just so you understand where I come from. I predicted, and you can see that in my YouTube channel, I predicted that Donald Trump would do everything in his power to make himself a dictator. And I predicted that in 2016. To me, what Trump is doing now is no surprise. It was totally predictable. And why? Because as I said, have been working to save democracy in Latin America. So I recognized Donald Trump for what he is. A Putin stooge. That's what he is. He was so similar to Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. Okay, so let me back up a little bit so you see where I'm coming from here. Because, first of all, what is needed here? What is needed is to fight to save the world. Okay? Resistance. Anti-coup. That's what we need. But in order to do that, we need intelligence. We need to understand what's going on. And that's why I'm making this video for you. To help you understand and pick this up running and not have to go through these years of study that I've done. Okay? So let's go back here. What can we learn from Venezuela? Well, what happened in Venezuela is not generally known outside of Latin America. It's a long story. If I would go through the whole story, it would take me 10-15 minutes, just that. So let me just take the essential part. Cuba cultivated for many years an agent, Hugo Chavez. And they finally managed to get Hugo Chavez elected president with the cooperation of the oligarchs in Venezuela. Similar as Adolf Hitler got elected in Germany. And in exactly the same way Donald Trump got elected in the US. The difference being that it wasn't any longer Fidel Castro who was behind it, but Vladimir Putin. And before him, KGB, it's not just one person. KGB is not Vladimir Putin. He just happens to be the leader of it now. But this is an organization that's been working for this for a long time. And what is it at its core? Organized crime of the worst kind. The worst kind of inhuman organized crime you can imagine. That is KGB. And it's even worse than you can imagine, I'm sure. If you think murdering people to steal their organs, that's the kind of inhumane organized crime it is. Now, let's see what happened there in Venezuela. So Hugo Chavez got installed as president after winning the election. In 1999, 10th of January, he was installed. And one of the first things he did was to overthrow the constitution, to change it and declare and convoke a constituting national assembly to write a new constitution. And to do that, he had to disband all the existing government. Now look at what Trump is doing. He's doing the same thing. Get rid of all the levers, of all the departments of government, but in a different way. It's a different method, but with the same goal, to get rid of the whole government as we know it. And then after that, Chavez put in his allies in all important positions to control the money. In Venezuela, 90% of foreign income came to the oil company, PDVSA. So he fired all the professionals and put in Chavistas, the Venezuela equivalent of MAGA, in those positions. People who are stupid but follow orders and to get the money. So it was a way to steal the money. Venezuela was the richest country in Latin America. Today it's by far the poorest. The amount of money they have stolen from Venezuela is mind-boggling. And now they're going to do the same from the United States. And who is behind this? I just told you. Putin, Vladimir Putin, KGB. This is the global organized crime group that robbed Venezuela blind, and now they're going for the United States. And you, Americans, fellow Americans, I'm also American, you still have a chance to stop it, but you have to act decisively. You cannot go on acting as if this was politics as usual. It's not. It's organized. This is a bank robbery. Think of this that's going on now as a huge heist against the United States government. A huge heist, that's what it is. And to stop it, you have to stop it. You have to arrest them. Do not make the mistake to believe that the democratic politicians, elected representatives, have a responsibility, because they can do nothing. They can't do anything about this to stop it. So don't blame them and don't rely on them. They are powerless. So who can do it? You, the American people, and only you can stop this. All power emanates from the people. So let me go back to Venezuela. What happened there? Well, people went out. In 2002, they organized the trade unions and the employers' unions together organized a huge march on the presidential palace, Miraflores, on the 11th of April 2002. And they forced Chavez to resign because the military refused to obey order to shoot at them. They had some other snipers who they had hired who killed about 19 people. But let me make this short. I don't want to make a long video, so let me get right to the point. What is required to save the United States? It is required that 1 million people, minimum, get together in Washington to block off everything and to force the resignation of the whole leadership of Trump and Vance and Johnson, and install a new leadership. I don't care what, it could be some judges who appoint someone, but all of those criminals have to go out, and there have to be held new elections. And then, of course, people are going to say, but that would violate the Constitution. Well, guess what? The Constitution they've already passed between their buttocks. There is no rule of law in the United States now. This is done to save the Constitution, because they have done a palace coup, a coup d'etat of the kind that's called palace coup, a coup from the inside. And here is required an anti-coup to restore the constitutional order. And the way to do that is with people, a humongous mass concentration of people with the passive permittance of the armed forces and the police, all the security forces. They should not participate actively. They should not be using guns. They should just stay away. Stay away and make sure nobody else opens fire on these peaceful protesters. That's what they did in Venezuela. And they got Hugo Chavez to resign. But then, 2 days later, a general with what really was a military coup brought Hugo Chavez back into power. And then they twisted the narrative to say that it was the 1 million civilians who had done the military coup, and the 100 militaries with weapons, they hadn't done a military coup. So it was completely backwards. There was a movie made about that that's called The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. That's a complete propaganda lie from Russia and her allies. Complete propaganda. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party has eaten this lie. And that's why the Democratic Party now is completely incapable of stopping Donald Trump, because they have eaten out of the hands of Vladimir Putin. They have consumed the Kool-Aid of Putin. So therefore they are now impotent to stand up against his coup d'etat in Washington. And therefore, only the American people can do this. Only people who are free from this mental poison that they have injected through propaganda. And speaking of propaganda, approximately half of everything you see in media is a lie. And that's how propaganda works and has to work. Because if they say more than half that are lies, then it's easy to see, okay, then the opposite is probably true. And that's where Donald Trump makes his mistake. Because Donald Trump lies almost the whole time. So he's a bad propagandist in that way because he's lying too much. Well, this, I know, is a hard pill to swallow. But I'm telling you the truth, the naked truth, based on my experience, being a part of the Venezuelan resistance in the strategy for 10 years. If you act too slow, you will lose democracy in the United States. You have to act fast and decisively. What Venezuela did in 2002 was the correct thing, and it can still be done in the United States. But remember, after they have been thrown out, that's when they will put in a counter coup with force. So then it has to be defended. And the way to defend that is what they did in Latvia, in Riga, after they threw out the Soviet Union. The people guarded the parliament and the center of government in Riga for months so that tanks and the Russian Spetsnaz troops could not get in there. So that comes after. First make him resign and then hold the whole of Washington, the whole of the center for months. And don't think it's only in Washington that this could be done, in the White House and the Congress. Also in Mar-a-Lago. That's another place. One could easily have armies of civilians marching north and south. Coming from the south, going north towards Mar-a-Lago, coming from Palm Beach, going south from West Palm Beach towards the bridge where the police have this sealed off, the Mar-a-Lago, and have put so many people there, just fill the place with protesters, because protesting and standing and walking is legal. So just fill it up. Don't convoke nothing public. Just agree in private and use chat apps. Use Telegram, use Signal, use groups. Don't use open platforms where they can censor it and read it. Use groups that are encrypted and where you have a limited amount of people. And everyone should use a nickname, not the real name. And then connect one person here to another group. Build up the organization as in a resistance against, let's say, Nazi occupation. That's the kind of mindset you have to have. And just build up this and do it. Lots and lots of people. The final concentration has to be centric, sustained. Centric and sustained. And until the regime falls. Nobody else can save the United States but you, the American themselves. We, here in Europe, we have to save our continent against Russia. You are on your own. Only you can save your country. Thank you for listening, and please share the link and spread the word.